I had just dropped my daughter off at kindergarten when I got a call from her homeroom teacher. "Mom, why hasn't your daughter Shirhan arrived at school yet? Is she sick?" I explained, puzzled. "Teacher, I just handed her over to you. Don't you remember?" The homeroom teacher immediately said, "Mom, don't joke around. I haven't seen you at all today." I was dumbfounded. I hurried to the kindergarten and found that my daughter really wasn't at school. I asked to check the surveillance camera, but it showed I had never brought my daughter to the kindergarten today. Even the kindergarten security guards and parents testified one by one that they had never seen me at the school. But I clearly brought my daughter to the kindergarten and handed her over to the homeroom teacher. In order to find my daughter, I chose to report to the police. Eventually, the police found my daughter's body in a pond near my home. Surrounding surveillance footage showed that I had personally pushed my daughter into the pond and drowned her alive. My mother-in-law cried and accused me while holding my daughter's body. What did my granddaughter do wrong? Why did you kill her? My husband angrily slapped me and yelled, "How could you do this to your own daughter? She was only 5 years old. Are you even human?" I had no way to defend myself and became the villainous mother everyone hated and called a murderer. My parents suffered online abuse because of this and were eventually driven to a tragic death at home. And I was sent to prison, where I was beaten to death. Until the day I died, I could not understand. Why is it that even though I clearly sent my daughter to kindergarten, everyone who saw my daughter and I insisted that they had never seen us, and I clearly had never been to the pond? Why did the surveillance camera capture me drowning my daughter? When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day I sent my daughter to kindergarten. My wife. My mother isn't feeling well. I'll take her to the hospital. Please take my daughter to kindergarten today. Joe Mingza helped his mother-in-law and spoke gently to me. These words sounded familiar, and suddenly I woke up. I turned to look at Joe Mingza and realized that I had been reborn. In my previous life, I was the one who promised Joe Mingza to send my daughter to kindergarten alone, and a series of strange events occurred. Eventually, my daughter drowned for no reason. I was framed as a murderer and beaten to death. Seeing that I didn't say anything, Joe Mingza walked up to me and asked worriedly, "What's wrong, my dear? Did you run out of time?" Joe Mingza's tone was gentle, as if he was afraid of hurting me. Looking at his gentle face, my heart sank. In my previous life, I was busy with work, and it was always him and my mother-in-law who took care of picking up and dropping off my daughter. But why did they ask me to take her when something like this happened? Could it really be such a coincidence? After hesitating for a while, I looked at Joe Mingza and said seriously, "It seems that my daughter doesn't look well today. Why don't we not let her go to school today?" Joe Mingza looked at his daughter with concern and then nodded. "Okay, I'll do whatever you say. Then remember to call the homeroom teacher and take the day off." Grandma also smiled and agreed. "Please take care of Shirhan at home today." Their behavior and reactions were very frank and normal, to the point where I couldn't see a single problem. But the more so, the more I couldn't figure it out. After Joe Mingza left with Grandma, I looked at my daughter and saw her sitting obediently at the table eating her breakfast. My eyes welled up, and I couldn't help but think of my previous life and the pitiful sight of her drowning to death. As a little girl, she experienced the moment of death and was so scared, I suppressed the bitterness and sat next to her, asking softly, "Shirhan, how have your father and grandmother been treating you lately?" My daughter gave a sweet smile and said, "They've been treating me very well." I paused and continued, "What about your homeroom teacher? How has she been treating you?" "My homeroom teacher is very nice and takes good care of me at kindergarten too." Her answer was naturally straightforward, and her innocent smile was full of happiness. After she finished, she looked at me with big, watery eyes and said blankly, "Mom, I'm not feeling unwell today. Why don't I go to school?" I stroked her innocent face and said from the bottom of my heart, "Because mommy can't bear to let you go." In my previous life, I sent my daughter to kindergarten, which led to her inexplicable drowning. In this life, I absolutely cannot let anything happen to her again. After my daughter finished her breakfast, sat in the living room watching TV, while I took the dishes into the kitchen to clean up. Halfway through my cleaning, my daughter's homeroom teacher called. "Shirhan's mother. Why hasn't Shirhan come to kindergarten yet? Is she sick?" The exact same question as in my previous life made my heart sink. As I walked towards the living room, I politely replied to the phone, "I'm sorry, Miss Sue. Shirhan isn't feeling well today, and I was just about to call in sick." Before I could finish, my voice came to a sudden halt, because my daughter, who was just watching TV on the sofa, had suddenly disappeared. A strong sense of panic swept over me in an instant. I quickly hung up the phone and quickly looked for my daughter around the house. But no matter how I looked and shouted, the whole room was empty, and no one answered me. I panicked. The experience of my past life floated before my eyes like a nightmare, making my legs weak and my eyes dizzy. With trembling hands, panicked and called the police. Eventually, the police, just like in my previous life, found my daughter's body in the pond near my house. I ran to the pond like crazy and watched in disbelief as my daughter's body was pulled out of the water. I saw my daughter, who was still alive and well just a moment ago, smiling sweetly at me, now turned into a cold, pale corpse. I felt like I was falling through the ice. I could hardly breathe. With my weak legs, I stumbled forward and hugged my daughter tightly, while using my body heat to warm her cold body. And choking, I called out to her. But no matter what I did or how I called, my daughter never opened her eyes to look at me. I realized that my daughter had left me again, and my heart ached to the extreme. Why? Why had I changed from my previous life and done my best to keep my daughter by my side, but still couldn't change the final outcome? Why, no matter what I did, I couldn't save my own daughter? A huge pain swept over me, leaving me to cry. When my mother-in-law and Joe Mingza heard the news, they hurried over. When they saw their daughter lying lifeless in my arms, my mother-in-law let out a heart-wrenching cry. Then, she stepped forward and pushed me aside to hold her daughter in her arms. Shirhan, my dear granddaughter, Grandma was just at the hospital for a medical appointment. How could you be gone? Joe Mingza was also in tears as he spoke, trembling with grief. Shirhan, get up. Don't scare your father. Are you blaming your father for not going to kindergarten with you today? Get up. I'm apologizing to you. If you can wake up, I'll do anything you want. As he said this, Joe Mingza slapped himself hard in the face with remorse. When the people around him saw this, they couldn't help but feel moved and say, alas, everyone in our neighborhood knows. This child was so well behaved. She was very polite to everyone. She was so pleasing to the eye. Yes, I remember that the whole family loved this child. Now that the child is dead, how will the family survive? What a pity. Such a good child. Why did he suddenly drown here? Amidst the murmuring of the crowd, a police officer investigating the case came up to me with a surveillance camera. We have just checked the nearby surveillance cameras and found that you brought the deceased here and drowned her by pushing her into the pond with your own hands. Do you have anything to say about this? Saying this, the policeman played the surveillance video in public. The surveillance clearly showed that I had brought my daughter to the edge of the pond and then dragged her into the pond and pushed her into the water until she stopped struggling. And I stopped. As soon as the image appeared, everyone at the scene looked at me, shocked, angry, hating, looking at the video footage on the surveillance that I had never done, and these pairs of eyes that wanted to tear me apart. I felt as if I had returned to my previous life. That kind of helpless despair once again engulfed me. Before I could say a word, Joe Mingza angrily stepped forward and slapped me hard in the face and angrily yelled, Su Wanning, are you still human? Shirhan is your own daughter. She's only 5 years old. How could you do it? Joe Mingza was so angry that this slap, he slapped me especially hard. Those pair of eyes staring at me were red as fire, as if they wanted to cut me into 1,000 pieces. Watching this scene that seemed so familiar, my heart was torn apart, and I was in unbearable pain. In my previous life, he did the same thing. He wouldn't listen to my explanations. And without saying a word, he slapped me and convicted me, shattering all my hopes. Grandma was also holding her daughter and glaring at me menacingly. In anguish, she said, Shirhan, what did you do to make you so unhappy that you killed her? Are you still a human being? Grandma became more and more agitated as she spoke and covered her chest as if she couldn't breathe. The onlookers were also filled with righteous indignation and pointed at me, cursing, this woman is truly worse than an animal. She even killed her own daughter. Seeing her cry so sadly just now, I really thought she was a good mother. Unexpectedly, she turned out to be a murderer putting on an act. It's disgusting. Someone like this is not worthy of being a mother and doesn't deserve to live in this world. As they spoke, they began spitting at me and throwing rubbish. Some even took out their phones to record a video and broadcast it live, accusing me of the crime. The live broadcast quickly became popular. All the comments lamented the death of their daughter and called me a monster as a mother. They cursed me to die a horrible death. Seeing that the situation was getting out of control, the police stepped forward to maintain order, while keeping a close eye on me. They spoke sternly. This incident has now become a big deal. The nature is extremely vicious. The evidence is conclusive. What do you have to say? Without thinking, I firmly replied, I didn't kill anyone. I would never harm my own daughter. Comrade policeman, I beg you, please investigate this matter thoroughly. Otherwise, The real murderer of my daughter will always be at large. I'm not afraid of death, but I don't want my daughter to die in vain. Upon hearing this, the policeman's brow furrowed, and the look in his eyes became more severe and cold, as if he were looking at an incorrigible criminal. We checked the surveillance footage immediately. There is no element of fraud in this. If you didn't do it, then who did? Yes. Who on earth killed my daughter and framed me for it? This question has baffled me for 2 lives, and will continue to haunt me until I die. Seeing that I was cornered and unable to speak, the audience began to yell again. Why aren't you making excuses? Are you embarrassed to say that you are the murderer? Who killed your own daughter? How dare you cry out for justice here? Aren't you disgusting? She pitied her daughter, who was so well-behaved and understanding, but she met a heartless animal of a mother. Her husband and mother-in-law were also unlucky to have met such scum. The live broadcast screen also cursed me for being unrepentant and wishing death on me. Amidst the public's curses, the leading police officer waved his hand. Take the person to the police station, saying, immediately someone put me in handcuffs and escorted me to the police car. In my previous life, I was just like this, unable to defend myself, and was imprisoned, and was beaten to death. Even my parents were hunted down because of this and couldn't leave their home. Whenever they showed their faces, they were covered in excrement and had wreaths thrown at them. Eventually, they died a miserable death at home, and no one came to take care of the aftermath until the body started to stink. Could it be that in this life, I will still not escape this tragic fate? My daughter will just have to die like this without knowing why, and the real culprit will never be found. My heart is churning, and my mind is in a mess. I really can't figure it out. What went wrong? Why in my previous life? I clearly had sent my daughter to kindergarten, but everyone who had seen my daughter and I insisted that they had never seen us. Why in this life? I clearly stayed at home with my daughter, but she disappeared for no reason, and died inexplicably in a pond near the house. Why, even though I clearly hadn't done anything? There was evidence of my crime on the pond surveillance. Why was all this happening? Who exactly had killed my daughter? And who was framing me? A flood of questions filled my mind, and I became more and more confused. I knew that something was very wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. What exactly had gone wrong? I could only try to recall all my experiences in these 2 lives, and try to grasp a clue to solve my doubts. Just as I was about to be pushed into the police car, I suddenly saw clearly, and everything became clear. Then I quickly turned around and shouted frantically, I know who the murderer is. My sudden cry made the lead officer, Captain Chen, look surprised. He looked at me and asked cautiously, who is it? I spoke seriously. It's my parents. Upon hearing this, the audience looked at each other in shock, with disbelief written all over their faces, while Captain Chen frowned, with a look of caution. This accusation is no small matter. What evidence do you have? I didn't say much, but instead looked serious and said, you'll know once you bring my parents here. Seeing my serious expression and firm tone, Captain Chen pondered for a moment, and finally made a phone call to have my parents brought in. While we were waiting for my parents, the crowd of onlookers grew larger and larger, and even my daughter's homeroom teacher hurried over to check on the situation. The live broadcast continued to attract a high level of interest. After a long wait, filled with tension for many netizens and onlookers, my parents were brought in by a few policemen. Once they arrived, my parents' eyes fixed on their daughter's pale corpse. My mother covered her chest and cried out in grief for a while, before her voice choked and she looked at me and asked, Ning, what is going on? My father also wiped away his tears and puzzled. Yes, Shirhan was fine. Why did this suddenly happen to her? Looking at their sad appearance of the white-haired sending off the black-haired, my heart ached, and tears fell unconsciously. I held back the pain in my heart and choked. Dad, Mom, I won't let Shirhan die in vain, but you must also take care of your health. In my previous life, everyone regarded me as a viperous and poisonous woman. They cursed me with the most vicious words. Even the prisoners in prison regarded me as a beast who abused and killed children. They beat me to death. Only my parents always believed in me and defended me, but their explanations were misconstrued as malicious cover-ups. Netizens vented all their anger on them. They were driven to a miserable death alive. No one noticed that the corpse had already started to stink. So, in this life, I called my parents here as soon as possible, so that they would not repeat the same mistakes. Seeing this scene, Captain Chen's face immediately turned gloomy. You tricked me by asking us to bring your parents here, just to tell them this. I looked at him helplessly and said, there was no other way. Things have already gotten this big. This is the only way I can protect my parents. Captain Chen looked at me deeply, and his tone softened a little. Then you just said you knew who the murderer was. And you were lying to us. About that. I shook my head. And said seriously. I do know who the murderer is. But I need to verify one thing first. Saying. I took out my phone. And opened the map. With the memory from my previous life. I clicked on a location. And handed it to Captain Chen. I need you to go here and take a video or a photo for me. Captain Chen's face was displeased. And asked, what do you really mean? I didn't answer. And just said seriously, if you want to know who the murderer is, do as I say. Only in this way can the truth be revealed. Captain Chen's gaze was piercing. And he stared at me intently for a long time. As if he wanted to see right through me. When he saw that my face was full of sincerity and openness, he finally nodded. And told someone to go to the place I specified. And take some photos and videos. When I saw the photos sent, my pupils contracted. Just as I thought. Seeing the certainty and confidence on my face. Captain Chen couldn't wait to say, we have done what you asked. Now, you should tell me who the real murderer is. The audience impatiently said, it's your own daughter who is dead. And you are still pretending and stalling. I think she must be the real murderer. Knowing that she is hopeless. She is deliberately stalling for time. I also think the surveillance footage is all there. It can't be fake. I guess she is just afraid of death. So she asked the police to bring her parents here. And tricked the police into taking photos. Just to buy some more time. People like this are a pollution to the world. And should just die. Netizens in the live broadcast room were also outraged. And called on the police not to waste any more time. And to hurry up and execute me on the spot. Seeing that the crowd's emotions were getting the better of me. Team leader Chen reminded me again. Hurry up. And tell me who the real culprit is. I didn't answer Team leader Chen directly. But took a step. And slowly walked towards the homeroom teacher in the crowd. When I got closer, the homeroom teacher was momentarily taken aback, and looked at me with a puzzled expression. The others at the scene were even more baffled. Under the gaze of everyone, I stared expressionlessly at the homeroom teacher, and said lightly, Miss Su, aren't you supposed to be teaching a class today? Why are you here? The homeroom teacher's eyes shot up, and she was stunned for 2 seconds before. She explained seriously, Shirhan has always been a well-behaved and sensible student at school. I really like her. I just watched the live broadcast and learned that something happened to her. I feel so bad. So I took leave to come and see you, Shirhan's mother. The homeroom teacher's expression of confusion was exactly the same as the previous life when she insisted she had never seen me. I didn't answer her, but took out the photos the police had just taken and handed them to her and asked, this is a newly developed site near your kindergarten. I wonder if Miss Su remembers it. Seeing the photos, the homeroom teacher's eyes changed, and a trace of nervousness flashed across her face, but soon returned to her blank expression. My life has always been a straight line between the kindergarten and home. I don't remember this place. Shirhan's mother, why are you suddenly asking me this? Looking at her innocent face, I said coldly, do you feel that this place is a bit like your kindergarten? If I'm not wrong, even if I sent my daughter to your kindergarten today, she would suddenly disappear, right? My question was straightforward and decisive, and caught the homeroom teacher off guard. She paused for several seconds, before frowning and retorting, Shirhan's mother, what are you talking about? In broad daylight, how could someone suddenly disappear? Besides, our kindergarten is full of surveillance cameras. Even if a child really disappeared in the kindergarten, we can retrieve the surveillance footage and find the child. The homeroom teacher's response was thorough and polite, and I couldn't hear a hint of a problem. But to my ears, it was full of flaws. In my previous life, when I dropped my daughter off at school, the homeroom teacher was waiting for me on this path that I had to take. Since I rarely picked up or dropped off my daughter, I didn't know much about her school. At the time, the locations all seemed similar to me, and the homeroom teacher was waiting at the entrance. There were also quite a few students, parents, and some school security guards standing around. So naturally, I thought this was my daughter's school. But in fact, these students, parents, and security guards were all actors hired by the homeroom teacher. In my previous life, I sent my daughter to a kindergarten that wasn't real. So later, when I retrieved the surveillance footage from the real kindergarten, neither my daughter nor I appeared, and the real parents and security guards in the kindergarten naturally never saw me. Recalling my past life, I desperately searched for my daughter and was unable to defend myself. It's like a lump in my throat. I'll never forget. After a deep sigh, I said with a sad smile, to be honest, I didn't think it was possible. But you are truly amazing. You really did it. I thought if I just left my daughter at home, she would be fine. But I never imagined you still made her disappear. I've always been curious about how you did it. Now, I understand. Hearing this, the audience's faces instantly changed. They looked at each other and whispered, "What does she mean? Does she mean that her daughter's death was related to the kindergarten teacher? I guess so. But it doesn't sound very credible to me." Right. The surveillance footage clearly shows that she drowned her own daughter with her own hands. It's bad enough that she doesn't know how to repent. But she even tried to frame the class teacher. This woman is really hopeless. Seeing that the crowd's opinions were clearly biased in her favor, the class teacher straightened up and said with a righteous air, "Shirhan's mother, I can understand your grief at losing your daughter. But that is no reason to slander me without proof. Shirhan's disappearance and death have nothing to do with me. During the time she went missing, I was at the kindergarten. All the students and teachers there can vouch for me." Facing her confident and powerful explanation, I nodded and said lightly, "I know that you were indeed at the kindergarten during that period of time, because I suddenly left my daughter at home and disrupted your plans. Therefore, this time it wasn't you who made my daughter disappear." After saying that, I looked at my daughter, and my heart ached. Slowly, with tears in my eyes, I said, "I've just been thinking that my daughter was clearly at home with me. And how could she just disappear into thin air while I was in the kitchen washing the dishes? Who on earth could have entered my home without making a sound and taken her from me without a trace?" I looked at my mother-in-law and Jo Mingza and said with deep feeling, "It could only have been you too." Faced with my sudden accusation, a look of shock clearly flashed across the faces of my mother-in-law and Jo Mingza. The next moment, Jo Mingza shouted in shock and anger, "Su Wanning, have you gone mad? I deliberately took my mother to the hospital. How could I have gone home and taken my daughter? Would I harm my own daughter?" The mother-in-law also pounded her chest and angrily said, "You killed my sweet granddaughter. And now you want to slander my son and me? How could you be so heartless?" I stared deeply at the mother-in-law and Jo Mingza and said sternly, "Shirhan has always been very obedient. She has never wanted anything from strangers. She doesn't easily talk to strangers. And she definitely won't open the door for strangers. She would never go with a stranger. She will only unconditionally trust the people closest to her. Do you know, this morning I deliberately asked her how she felt about the two of you." The little girl smiled sweetly and said from the bottom of her heart that the two of you are very good to her. She trusts you so much that even if you secretly took her away, she would obediently not say a word, saying, I wiped away my tears and lamented with great sadness. How could the simple-minded her have never imagined that the two of you, her most trusted relatives, would take her away to take her life? Hearing this, Jo Mingza and his mother-in-law glanced at each other and both saw a trace of disbelief in each other's eyes. The next second, Jo Mingza angrily cried out, "Su Wanning, don't you dare slander me. Shirhan was raised by my mother and I with our own hands. What reason do we have to kill her? Besides, the police have the surveillance video of you killing your daughter with your own hands. In terms of suspicion, who can be as big as you?" Jo Mingza was obviously furious. He looked at me as if he were about to burst into flames. I looked at him disappointedly and said helplessly, "Yes, the video is real." Upon hearing this, Jo Mingza stared at me coldly and said sternly, "Then what else is there for you to argue about?" I sighed and said slowly, "Let me tell you a story first. The day my mother gave birth, she had a difficult delivery and hemorrhaged. The doctor issued critical care notifications again and again. My father knelt outside the ward and prayed to the heavens again and again. My mother finally gave birth to me with all her strength. But at that time, she had another baby in her womb. That was my twin sister. But because of the difficult delivery and heavy bleeding, my mother simply didn't have the strength after giving birth to me. The situation was critical, and there was a risk of losing both lives at any time. So, when the doctor asked my father whether to save the older or the younger, my father said without hesitation, to save the older. But my mother kept shaking her head. She cried and grabbed the doctor's hand, begging the doctor to save the baby in the womb. In the face of this dilemma, the doctor could only do his best. Fortunately, in the end, my sister and my mother both survived. It's just that my sister had been in my mother's womb for too long and developed many congenital diseases and has been unwell since childhood. So, as far as I can remember, my parents have been especially caring towards my sister. Hearing me say this, the people present all raised questions in succession. Why did you suddenly say this? Don't tell me you're trying to use the identity of your sister to take the blame for you? In order to get off the hook, you really went to great lengths to get out of it. By suddenly making up a story about a twin sister. It's like you think we're all idiots. Amidst the chorus of incredulity, someone couldn't help but speak up. I used to be their neighbor. She did have a twin sister. But as I recall, her sister didn't do well in the college entrance exam and jumped into a river and killed herself. Mentioning this sad matter, my mother couldn't help but look at me with tears in her eyes. And puzzled. Lightning, your sister died a long time ago. Why are you suddenly talking about her? I looked solemnly and said, I used to think my sister was dead too. But until today, I realized we were both wrong. The person in this video does look like me. Even when I first watched it, I thought the person in it was me. But just now I watched it a few times and realized that the person in the video has a habit of rubbing her ears. When I was little, I hurt my ears. I never touch my ears. But my younger sister has always had the habit of rubbing her ears. Since the video is not fake, and the younger sister in it is naturally real, I finished speaking and took a step towards a woman in a cap and mask in the crowd. I stood in front of her and said bitterly, am I right? Younger sister. On hearing this, the woman took off her mask, revealing a face that was almost identical to mine. And, amid the shocked stares of the crowd, she stared straight at me, while applauding, and exclaiming, Sister is truly amazing, and still has such a strong logical analysis ability. You are worthy of being the former top scorer in the college entrance exam. When my sister really appeared in front of me, my mother's eyes instantly widened, with disbelief on her face, and my father was so shocked that his hands trembled, with mixed emotions in his eyes. Yes, how could they not be mixed? My long-lost daughter had suddenly reappeared in front of them, but as a murderer, killed, or their own granddaughter. How sad. I looked at my sister and said with sadness, you know, in fact, I have long suspected that you took my daughter, but I can't believe it. After all, we grew up together, and we're so close. I kept telling myself, even if my sister is not dead, she could never kill my daughter. I even suspected Zhou Mingze and my mother-in-law, and tried to test them. I don't even want to think of it as you. Now, I just want to ask, where did I ever do you wrong? Why did you kill my daughter? I don't understand. My sister and I were close since we were young. We went to school together. We played together. We studied hard together. We set goals. We kept each other on track. During the period of cramming for the college entrance exam, we were each other's competitors and each other's pride. We were obviously so close. Why did she do this to me? In the face of my questioning, my sister stared at me with a smile on the corner of her mouth, her eyes full of disdain. If you want to blame someone, blame her for being your daughter. She deserves it. I was even more confused and asked, what do you mean? My sister didn't answer my question directly, but asked in return, do you know why I didn't do well in the college entrance exam that year? I frowned slightly and said bluntly, no. My sister snorted, don't pretend to be stupid. Do you remember? The eve of the college entrance exam, when you deliberately brought me a bowl of mung bean soup? As a result, on the day of the exam, I had diarrhea the whole day. You went to great lengths to get me to drink the medicated mung bean soup, just in case I would take your place as top scorer in the college entrance exam, didn't you? Do you know how hard I worked for that exam? Do you know that exam was more important to me than my life? I had a clear chance to get into the best university and have the best life. And it was you who ruined everything for me. I hate you, and I hate this life without hope. So, I chose to commit suicide. But unfortunately, I survived. I think even God didn't want me to die. After all, you're the one who did the wrong thing. Why should I pay for your crime? Why should you be able to step on the ladder of the top scorer in the college entrance exam and step by step reach the pinnacle, while I can only rot in the mud because of you? Later, I figured it out. God didn't let me die because it felt that it wasn't me who deserved to die, but you, Su Wanning. You ruined my life. Isn't it only right that I should get revenge on you? My sister looked at me with righteous indignation and a sense of satisfaction at having avenged a great wrong. My sister was talking about something I remembered, but I hadn't poisoned her mung bean soup. Before I could say anything, my mother burst into tears and said, Wan Xiao had nothing to do with this. It was your mother who gave you the poison. On hearing this, my sister's face was filled with shock. But the next moment, she sneered, Mom, I know you love Su Wanqing, but you really didn't need to take the blame for her. The way you did only made me hate her more. My mother shook her head and confessed with a heartbreaking look. No, it's not true. What I said. You've had poor health since you were little. The doctor said, your body can't stand the cold, but you're so ambitious. I know. You want to get into Tsinghua. You want to make something of yourself out there in the world. But Tsinghua is in the north. It's freezing there. It's not suitable for you to stay. If you go, your condition will worsen. You could die at any time. I really can't rest easy about you. That's why I came up with this plan. I want you to give up going north. Mom just wants you to be safe and healthy for the rest of your life. My father also nodded and said seriously, what your mother said is true. She did all this for you. When she learned that you had committed suicide because you didn't do well in the exam, she regretted it immensely. And even went to the river where you committed suicide several times to jump in and atone for your sins. After hearing what my parents said, my sister finally believed that I had nothing to do with this. She looked at my mother in disbelief and broke down, shouting, "Why did you make decisions for me? Why did you ruin me?" My mother was full of remorse. "Night Chow. I didn't mean to. I just want you to live a good life. I'm doing this for your own good." Seeing this scene, the audience members were filled with emotion. Hey, what a tragedy. I never thought that just because a mother wants to take care of her daughter, it would lead to such a tragedy. Yes, if only they had talked about it earlier. Instead of causing someone's death now, this mother and daughter are really pitiful and hateful. The key is that this younger sister is too suspicious and is hostile towards everyone, even if she doesn't know the truth. There's no need to get her sister's daughter killed just because of a college entrance exam. It's just that their child has done nothing wrong. For no reason at all, they became their scapegoats. Listening to those piercing and heart-rending comments, my sister laughed, with tears in her eyes. But in the end, all kinds of bizarre changes occurred. Because of and in the end, she stopped paying attention to my mother, but looked at me, and then at my daughter's cold body. Then with a thud, she knelt before me, her face full of remorse. "Sister, I'm sorry. I misunderstood you. I always thought that you wanted to outdo me and take the top spot in the college entrance exam from me. Do you know that I valued that exam more than my life? I clearly had the opportunity to get into the best university and have the best life. You ruined everything for me. I hate you and I hate this life without hope. So, I chose to commit suicide. But unfortunately, I survived. I think even God didn't want me to die. After all, you were the one who did the wrong thing. Why should I pay for your crimes? Why should you be able to step on the ladder of the top scorer in the college entrance exam and step by step to the top, while I can only be ruined by you and rot in the mud?" Then I figured it out. God didn't let me die because it felt that it wasn't me who deserved to die. It was you, Su Wan-Ning. You ruined my life. Isn't it only right that I take revenge on you? My sister looked at me with righteous indignation. There was a sense of satisfaction in her eyes, as if she had avenged a great wrong. I remembered something about this incident that my sister had mentioned, but I hadn't poisoned her mung bean soup. Before I could say anything, my mother burst into tears and said, "Wan Xiao, this has nothing to do with Wan Qing. It was your mother who poisoned the soup." On hearing this, my sister's face showed shock.